Ladies and gentlemen, the panel will begin in a couple of minutes. Please begin making your way to your seats. At this time, please silence or turn off your electronic devices. As a reminder before we get started, audience members will be invited to ask questions from the standing mics on the floor at the appropriate time.
I'll let you know how that one plays out. Of course, if I can ever see you.
Okay, I'll try not.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome to the stage Chief Warrant Officer for Tim Reyna, U.S. Army retired, AFCEA's Chief Information Officer and Chief Technology Officer.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's session at Operations Focus Stage, how are current operations influencing disruptive technologies and future requirements? Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank Lockheed Martin for their sponsorship for this panel. This afternoon by Joe DiPietro, Vice President and General Manager.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. So for the good part of this here, I have the distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our moderator today, is Captain Colin Corridan, U.S. Navy Department Director, Disruptive Capabilities Office. Captain Corridan graduated from Massachusetts Maritime Academy in 1999 with a degree in maritime transportation and subsequently receiving his commission at U.S. Coast Guard Third Mate's license for open oceans and unlimited tonnage. During his many operations, he completed 4 Western Pacific and Arabian Gulf tours, Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, New Dawn, Some of his most recent tour was commanding officer of USS Manchester, Task 59 Fifth Fleet. Welcome, sir, and thank you for being our moderator for today's panel. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon and welcome to this panel on how current operations are influencing disruptive technology and future requirements. I'm thrilled to have such a distinguished panel group with us today to discuss how we can adapt to rapidly changing warfare environment. Before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank AFCEA International and Naval Institute for putting on this exceptional event and creating a platform to bring together military, government, and industry folks. These exchanges of ideas are invaluable to our force and maintaining the advantage over our adversaries. As we examine how current operations are shaping disruptive technology and driving future requirements, it's essential to recognize the unprecedented pace at which our strategic environment is evolving. The U.S. Navy operates in an increasingly complex environment, battle space, where the adversaries are rapidly advancing their capabilities. This dynamic landscape demands that we not only adapt, but also innovate, leveraging disruptive technologies to maintain maritime superiority. Today, we explore the intersection of operational insights and technological advancements, identifying how those learned in real-world missions can inform the development of cutting-edge solutions to meet tomorrow's challenges. With input from both senior military leadership and industry experts, this panel is an opportunity to align our efforts to ensure the Navy remains at the forefront of global security. I'd like to introduce this distinguished group of panelists. We'll start with retired Vice Admiral Bob Harwood. Admiral Bob Harwood is an Executive Vice President for International Business and Strategy at Shield AI, where he is responsible for expanding the company's international business operations and strategy on every continent. Before joining Shield AI, he was the Chief Executive at Lockheed Martin for 8 years and a Vice Admiral SEAL in the United States Navy, with his last assignment as the Deputy Commander of U.S. Central Command. Please join me in welcoming Admiral Harwood. Our next panelist is retired Vice Admiral Tom Copeman, Vice President, Strategy and Naval Systems, Missile and Fire Control, Lockheed Martin. I'm going to try to compete with next door.
Yeah, they're fired up. I'm here.
Vice Admiral Copeman is a retired surface warfare officer, having served on and commanded cruisers and destroyers in both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets. He served as SWO boss in his last Navy job. He spent the last 11 years in the missile businesses at both Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Please join me in welcoming Admiral Copeman. Next panelist is retired Vice Admiral Mike Connor, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Thayer Mahan. Vice Admiral retired Connor served in the Navy for 35 years, primarily in the submarine force. He served on 5 submarines and commanded at the ship, squadron, task force, and type commander levels. He is the co-founder and CEO of Thayer Mahan, Inc., a maritime technology company that develops and operates remote and autonomous systems to deliver undersea services to customers in government and industry. His company focuses on acoustic detection solutions and seabed operations, a really hot button topic nowadays. His company employs cutting-edge scientists and engineers, plus over 100 officers and enlisted former military members of every branch of the U.S. military. Please join me in welcoming Vice Admiral Connor. And lastly but not least is Rear Admiral Wilson Marks, Commander, Naval Surface and Mine Warfighting Development Center. Rear Admiral Marks has served aboard cruisers and destroyers throughout his career. He commanded the USS Mason, the USS Robert Smalls. Ashore, he served at Surflant, OpNev staff at N96, as the executive assistant to the commander of U.S. Pacific Fleet. Overseas, he commanded a provincial reconstruction team in Afghanistan and Naval Surface Group Western Pacific. He assumed duties as Commander, Naval Surface and Mine Warfighting Development Center in May 2023. Please join me in welcoming Rear Admiral Marks. We'll begin today by opening remarks from each panelist. Afterward, we'll dive into deeper discussions, topics, and lastly, we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Let's start with opening remarks. Admiral, would you like to take it? You're on.
Can you hear me?
You're hot.
I think you'd have to be a blind person not to see what's going on with drone warfare. I mean, it's prevalent in our country. There are hundreds of drones flying every day. Our adversaries, Iran, and our allies, Ukraine, have modified it and then using them extensively in warfare today. So to not see the potential and not see where all this is leading to, you almost have to be a blind man. Now, our challenge has been innovation. We have large bureaucracy, large systems that deliver a gold product, but the time is killing us. We've got to be able to innovate quicker than our adversaries and even our own allies. And I'm struck by the example when we went into Afghanistan in 2001, we, DOD, had no ISR platforms. The agency had some Predators they were using, but they weren't going to let us use that. So instead, we brought in a P3 to be an ISR platform. Over the next 15 years, we spent hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars buying ISR platforms, and General Atomics made a killing out of it with Predators. In the matter of a couple months, Ukraine came in and innovated and made drones lethal for a few $1,000s and made them prevalent throughout the battlefield. So they innovated quicker than we did. I'm seeing Iran and our adversaries do the same thing. So I think we have to realize the potential of this tool, and I'm starting to see the system acknowledge that the role drones are going to play, but we've got to have a process that innovates with the speed of relevancy that our adversaries are using. So I'll turn it over to my shipmate, Tom, after those opening comments.
Thank you, sir.
So, you know, the title of this seminar here is Disruption and how current operations are driving disruption, but you can't talk about disruption unless you talk about innovation, as my friend Admiral Harward talked about. If you listen to Admiral Kaler this morning, he talked about how we got to be innovative, we got to be faster, we've got to deliver more capabilities much more quickly than we do right now. And there's a lot of criticism in the press about the slow and Byzantine nature of which the big defense primes deliver capability. And it's not for a matter of wanting to do so in a quick matter, it's just the system that is in place both in Congress and in the DoD kind of prevents it. This is my Ref A for all my remarks. It's the 2024 Commission on National Defense Strategy, commissioned by the Congress to do. And I think if anybody in the room cares about the defense industrial base and how we bring new capabilities to the warfighters, you need to read through this. It's pretty dire. It's pretty sobering. A lot of people have probably read it, but unfortunately, there's nothing really all that new in there. It's kind of the stuff that's been going on for a really long time. There's a bunch of examples where we have been innovative very, very quickly, particularly in Ukraine. Unfortunately, we can't talk about most of them here, but we've done all of the defense companies and the DoD has done some amazing stuff with integrating our capabilities over there to help them in their fight against the Russians. So it can be done. We can do it quickly, but the system that is currently in place in the United States, as the PAC Fleet Commander said this morning, you know, you got contracts, you got acquisition, you got requirements. You know, if it takes 2 years to get a requirement before you can start doing POM planning, which then 2 years later you might show up in a budget, you're already 4 years into it. So that's not very quick and it's not very agile. So we got to reform the system. Thank you.
In my case, I came to the private sector having been the head of the submarine force, so being one of those man trained and equipped guys. And like my brothers in aviation and surface, we faced the same issues. We faced issues with depot maintenance. We faced issues with construction and production. And meanwhile, the world was changing very quickly. We had to be in more places, not less. We needed more assets, not less. And the legacy processes could not produce them, still can't. Running in parallel with that was this range of emerging technologies, low power electronics, energy harvesting systems, satellite communications, such that we can do more with remote and autonomous systems. And so I tried to convince a lot of the large primes to do that, and they explained to me, and almost as if I was stupid, that that's not how it works. We need to see a requirement, and then we need to build a requirement after we evaluate our chances of winning that. And it's that is a formula for being 10 years behind. So tried the Silicon Valley approach, tried to shoot ahead of the duck a little bit so that we would have the right combination of capabilities ready to help, not to replace, but to help when we needed to move more quickly. And the time is right for a lot of you to act on that in the air, on the surface, and under the surface. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon again. Thanks to AFCEA and USNI for having us put this panel together today. SMITIC was created 10 years ago to increase the tactical proficiency and the lethality of the surface fleet. Much of that was to do with the vision of Vice Admiral Copeman here to my right. So to be on a panel with you is fantastic, sir, and I really appreciate that. We have several line of efforts that you've heard probably some of the speakers talk about earlier today, but the number one effort that we have is the development and creation of our warfare tactics instructors. Those are the true innovators that we have and the true secret sauce of what makes SMITIC what SMITIC is doing right now. They are the enablers for all of our other lines of effort that we have, whether it's data extraction, TTP development, training, or operational support. The current conflict in the Red Sea, it's been spoken about several times here, but it's provided us an opportunity, but I would say it's also driven us to that innovation and the collaboration that we so need for the high-end fight of the future. A couple of examples of that, one of which is how we've been able to take, and it was mentioned in the last panel and also mentioned earlier by the SWO boss, but this is something where we've been able to take the lessons learned of combat from back in October of 2023 when we had the first engagements. It took us about 40 days for us to get the ship to pull in, get data tapes taken off the ship, sent back to CONUS to be analyzed, looked at, to find some lessons learned, and then to get those lessons learned back to the ships. We have now taken that from weeks to days to hours to now we typically have, within about 48 hours of an engagement taking place, we are getting actual data back to CONUS, being able to be looked at and analyzed by our teams and get information back out to the warfighters. But that only happened because of the collaboration across numerous groups, including Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, Navy Surface Warfare Center's Dahlgren Division, Corona, Lockheed Martin, NIWIDIC, POIWS.
Our advantage over the adversary. So now I'm going to ask a few questions of the panelists, specifically of each panelist, and we're going to dive deeper into that conversation. So I'm going to start with Admiral Copeman, sir. How do current operations impact the prioritization and development of disruptive technologies, and where are we missing opportunities?
Yes, so I think the current operations, particularly, both in the Red Sea and in Europe, they demand that we be quicker. There was a seminar in Estonia a 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and the panelists were discussing that the tactics and the equipment are changing every couple of weeks on the front line, not every couple of years. And And so that's not a Western Pacific fight, but it's a fight that's existential to the survival of the Ukrainians. And so necessity has always been the mother of invention. And so they have been very adept at changing their tactics and changing their equipment. And we have to, the United States, as Admiral Harwood was talking, I think we have to be able to do that on a much larger scale than we do right now. We can do it. We've done it. There's some good bright spots out there. The Defense Innovation Unit, I think, which doesn't operate within the ecosphere of the federal acquisition regulations, has been able to field some pretty good systems very, very quickly in comparison to what it normally takes us. But it's not weeks or days. It's months and years. The rapid capability offices that OSD and all the services have fielded, I think, are a good step in the right direction. But I think we have to step back and really look at the whole ecosystem. If we have to be, if the current operations in the Red Sea and in the European theater, if they're driving us to be innovative and change tactics, techniques, and procedures much, weekly, monthly, then our system needs to change, because it is not designed to do that. The budgeting system's not designed to do that. The requirements generation system's not designed to do that. The contracting is not designed to do it. So we really, we probably as an enterprise, a defense capabilities delivery enterprise, the government, contractors, Congress probably need to really figure out how to fix that problem. I think if we don't do that, in the Commission in the National Defense Strategy that I referred to, discusses it pretty thoroughly. I think we'll find ourselves in the American public pretty disappointed if we get in a big war.
Sure. How important do you think the international partnerships, you talked about Ukraine, is it going to be important for us to continue to the partner?
Oh, I think it's very important. I mean, our allies and friends, they have capabilities that are different than ours because they have different problems that they face. But, again, it gets into what's ITAR and how long does it take to get approval to even talk about something, let alone do something about it. It's nuts, and we need to figure it out. And we really, yes, sir. But it's really important because, an enterprise of 20 modern or 30 or 40 modern armed forces, they all got really smart people, and they all look at problems a different way than we do. And there's a lot to be learned, and it shouldn't be so hard to share what we know.
Sure. Anyone else would like to share on that question?
Yeah, I'll take a couple shots. And I'm going to blend this, because it's not just current operations, it's current events. So let me give you an example. If you look at the current operations going on in Israel, the Red Sea, Ukraine, we're seeing the effect of jamming. We're seeing the effects of mass in terms of drones, what Iran launched against Israel, what the Ukrainians are using, and affordability. And you're seeing those three enablers change the military environment completely. It's allowed a country of 28 million people to hold off Russia. But let's also blend into that what's happening in current events. Was anyone here at the Reagan National Security Forum? Okay, I'm out there, we're out on a patio, you have the Secretary of Defense, the service chiefs, and we're standing on a balcony, and all of a sudden flies up in front of us a 20-foot quadcopter. No one knew who the hell it was, where it come from. I'm the hell out of there, because I don't know what the damn thing, they're all sitting there looking at. But today, in the United States, there are hundreds of drones flying every day. And so that's enabled by cheap, mass, and we can't control it. But here's the really, I think, one of the technologies and enablers that's going to change everything. And we tried to do this in our own military in the 50s and 60s. My dad was flying drones off his ships in the late 50s called the DASH, the Deployable Anti-Submarine Helicopter. That program went nowhere. Then we started developing vertical takeoff and landing aircraft because we knew the Russians were going to come after our runways, and now when we deploy anywhere, we rely on that. So when we get this vertical takeoff and landing that you're seeing on every drone out there right now, but can add a jet engine to it for deployability, the whole landscape's going to change. That's revolutionary, not evolutionary. We're putting jet engines on drones. There's a $250 million program in the Navy because it's an evolution. We've got to be much more quicker and adaptable and revolutionary change. And I suggest to you, a jet-powered vertical takeoff unmanned drone changes everything. When that drone has the range to go 3,000 miles at a speed of 700 miles an hour, we can deploy hundreds of those from the US, Hawaii, anywhere in the world we want with really no logistics. So these are the type of revolutionary changes we need, not only the technology and the willpower to do it, but then the willpower to make it happen. Those are the things I think we've got to focus on.
Great point, sir. Thank you very much. And I'm a little disappointed to hear that you didn't single-handedly take out that 20-foot quadcopter. Admiral Marks, as we look ahead to the future of naval operations, how should we be adjusting our training, personnel development, and organizational structures to effectively integrate disruptive technologies into everyday operations?
Thanks, Colin. Well, I think, for the last 10 years, what SMITIC has been doing is the people have been thinking of ways that we can outthink, outmaneuver, and outpace our enemies. And so a few of the things that we've already done, and we still need to do more, but a couple of things we've done is some in the organizational structures, is taking a look at how we actually position our warfare tactics instructors throughout the force. One of the things we're doing is our goal is to have a warfare tactics instructor on every ship, every DESRON, and every FIBRON, in addition to all the training commands where they already exist. Right now, we're about 66% across the fleet in all the ships right now. That's one, to try and level bubbles on the tactical training that we provide to every ship. The second, one of the other things we're doing is we've embedded some of our tactics instructors at the Program Executive Office Integrated Warfighting Systems. So we have tacticians next to the engineers who are developing the next level of systems so they can develop it at speed. And they're thinking about it from not only an engineering perspective, but also a tactical perspective. And we're seeing some great strides in that and reducing some of our timetables on being able to bring things to the fleet faster. I think one of the other things we've done is we've created a surface requirements group. And what this is doing is we have not only warfare tactics instructors, but we reach down to the fleet all the way up to Echelon and OpNav, where we're looking at the 0 to 2, the 2 to 7 year time horizons, where we're looking at what are some capabilities that the surface warfare community needs to fill our gaps right now that we can actually get after. And some of those capabilities are where our warfare tactics instructors think about things a little bit differently and can take things that we already have in existence and use them differently to provide us a capability gap solution. Under training, some of the adjustments we made, I talked earlier about how we're trying to close that OODA loop that Admiral Kaler mentioned earlier today of getting the tactics back to the ships in the Red Sea. But the other piece of that is how we're taking those lessons learned and we feed them directly back into Strike Group 4 and 15 for our Comp 2Xs, SMITIC for our Surface Warfare Advanced Tactical Training, SWATs. So the ships that are in training right now already get trained on the lessons that they're learning in the Red Sea today. So when they come out there, they're even better. And on top of that, we roll those into our schoolhouse training. So the folks who are coming through in the schoolhouse who haven't even gotten to their platforms yet are learning these lessons before they even get to the platforms. The other big piece of this, and this has been mentioned, I think, by every panel out here, is live virtual constructive. This is the real game changer of how we're going to increase the speed of tactics development, of training to the higher level that we need, because that LVC capability allows us to do this where people can't watch. We can take a new capability, program it in, train to it, and then when we bring it out to the fleet already knows how to use it because they already have TTP to use right away. And then I would say lastly, it's under the personnel development. And this is where we have groups of people, not just Witties, but we have groups of people, communities of focus, where we're looking at those, like unmanned systems, for example, working with Surf Dev Group, which is bringing up they have our development squadrons, that they've stood up where we're working with all the unmanned systems to be able to move those faster and test and operate them so we can get them out to the fleet even quicker.
Thank you, sir. Anything from the former man train and equip gents on that?
I would say we need to train our folks to respond more quickly to enemy changes. So we all grew up with, we went from having separate intel and ops to merging intel and ops so we could respond more quickly in a short time cycle. We're approaching the speed of technology such that we're going to need to go from intel to ops to technical performance of the tools we bring in the theater. And that is going to require somewhat more sophisticated operators with more general understanding of how to change the operating parameters of the tools that they pose to the adversary. So the adversary has to face this very constantly changing set of threats to keep them on their back feet.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. The next question is for Admiral Connor. In your view, what are the most pressing challenges to foster an effective partnership between industry and government to meet the emerging defense requirements?
I'd say the number one factor is trust and cooperation. I hear a lot that that industry, especially the emerging industries, look at the system, the syscoms and the labs as being slow and always throwing up obstacles without solutions. I see on the government side, they look at people like me trying to create some tool that gets vendor lock on the government. So what we really need is, and the tools exist to do this, we need a system where certain parts of the support community, whether it's the syscoms or some of the labs or the FFRDCs, can be empowered and rewarded, not for putting obstacles up, but for creating this pathway that quickly integrates new technologies on sort of the legacy backbone for sharing information and so forth. We could do a lot better than we're currently doing.
Great, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, in my current role at the Disruptive Capabilities Office, I get asked a lot, number one comment from industry that I'm seeing is, hey, we've got solutions, we just don't know where to take them, and when we have them, you're not buying them. So any other comments on the relationship between government and industry and where we can improve? Sure.
If I could, so I think one of the things that we're really trying to close the gap on with industry, and our industry partners have been absolutely phenomenal at the response on this, is, I mentioned the Surfer G earlier, and what I didn't mention was being able to have some of those classified conversations with our industry partners and be able to just tell them very bluntly what we think our gaps are and then where they can help us. And I think we've been able to increase that recently, but we still have more to do. And this is our third year of doing this at the very near-term range, but we have more to do on that.
Sure. Anything, sir?
I was just going to say another take on this is ownership and unity of effort, because you got this terrible situation, and it's kind of back to the bad lawyer jokes, and procurement's the same reason. You get these guys all the reasons why you can't do stuff. We need the attitude and the flip of all the ways we can do it. So we've got to reverse that paradigm and really find those champions who are willing and bold enough, I own this problem and I'm going to drive it, as opposed to what you're seeing in a very federated system. I was very encouraged by seeing the comments from the Navy's Surface Warfare Director, I forget, N89 or I forget which one, but he came out and said, look, the future is unmanned surface vessels. We're going to do mass, we're going to do fast, we're going to do affordable, we're going to find one model and move forward. So he owns it. He's driving that train. I think we need to see more leadership in that position who can drive the ship and bring everyone into the vortex to make it happen.
Sure, and I would offer that laws are hard to change, but policy is not. So having some bold leadership to change the policies to move faster is going to be really helpful. Any other comments? No.
I would say on the policy piece that we often underestimate what the policies actually already allow us to do. We just need to do it.
Yeah, that's a fair comment, sir. Question for you, sir. How can we ensure that the Navy maintains technological superiority while balancing legacy systems with new technologies? Basically, the innovator's dilemma. Is there a risk of over-investing in emerging tech and neglecting the modernization of existing technologies?
Well, I tell you, the paradigm shift, because the money's there now, and this is something I'm seeing in the current environment. I think Tom could speak about as much because I know Lockheed Martin puts about $1 billion a year into research and development. We're at this wonderful position where venture capitalists and others see the opportunities in the defense industry, and they're willing to pump a lot of money in this. So we've got more money than we've ever seen. We're in a small tech company. We've got almost $1 billion, if not more, significantly more invested. So we're seeing everyone invest, but they need to see results. So I'm less driven by the requirements than an illustration of what you can do for concepts of operations. I'll throw out there right now, because in one of my previous lives, I was at the White House, I wrote the strategy for maritime security. The #1 issue was maritime wide area surveillance. We now have that capabilities in drones that are doing that. How do we get that into CONOP? We're flying out on Muse, but that's an example where I think we have to validate, illustrate these, and support CONOPs as opposed to straight requirements. And there's plenty of resources out there as long as we have leaders who we can support to drive that change.
So we just got to, it exists, the tech exists, the money exists, the will exists. We just got to make it all connect.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I think in some respects we're fundamentally moving in the right direction with the push for open architecture, the rapidly increasing use of artificial intelligence to help us solve problems more quickly. And it gets into what Admiral Marks was talking about, the training. We can't field systems that require a sailor or an entire watch team to spend 6 weeks on how to use it, and then 2 months later we change it out with a new improved system. It's got to be simpler. Mike Salvato and some of the other SWOs remember, you get underway for COM 2X and you spend 2 days just trying to get the comms going. The SATCOM's not working, the link's not working, we got to do better than that.
I never experienced that, sir.
Yeah, and we're getting there, but again, it gets into why is it so slow? We've got these unbelievably exquisite networks and BMC4A capabilities across the services, but they can't all talk to each other, and so some of the admirals that are speaking earlier today highlighted that, and I think again, we got to take it seriously. We got to take the threats that are out there seriously, and we got to move quicker. We can't continue to move at the pace that we've been moving in.
Yeah, I agree, sir. I think the leadership now is recognizing that all of the great assets are incredible. All of the robots are really cool, but how are we going to make them talk to each other? We had a hard enough time having our assets connect with our own assets. Now we're talking about different companies. We're talking about different international partners, and how do we make sure that those robots continue to do their job even if they get disconnected? And so I think that's the pathways of data are really a huge thing right now.
Let me add one more just off and this is the issue with AI, and I think this is the potential of AI. And as we go through the policy, legal, and moral dilemmas of AI, I think we're going to see 3 models evolve. There's going to be first, and since I'm a naval officer, I go to the Army model, where in the Army you don't do anything unless it's approved, okay? So that you're going to have a guy inside the loop, and he's going to approve every step in their AI. There's next the Navy model, the Unidir model, skipper, unless otherwise directed, off I go. In that model, the guy's sitting on time, the loop, just monitoring it, but able to stop it in any case. And that's when we have connectivity. But there's going to be this operational imperative when we don't have communications, when we don't have GPS, where we still need that platform to do the mission. Now, morally, ethically, and just trust and confidence, that's going to be a bridge too far, but we're going to need that option when we need it. If we aren't preparing and training for that environment, we're going to be behind the curve when we need it. If we go to China, we don't have GPS, we don't have comms, AI becomes that enabler to allow these platforms to accomplish the mission without us knowing it's doing it. We're just going to have to trust it to accomplish it. Now, if the mission comes back, you can download it and verify it, but I think on the kinetic activity, we won't. So we're going to have to be prepared for those options when it comes. AI is a tool to give us that option, but we're going to need that option and not use it like a gun. Better to have one than not need it, but if you don't have one when you need it, we're going to be in trouble.
Anything else? Good.
Yeah, I'll add to that one. It's people worry about what happens if you can't talk to them. And, you know, submarine background, say, what happens if you can't tell your submarines, if they jam you and you can't tell your submarine to stop? I said, well, if you keep jamming us, they're going to keep killing you until you let us talk to them and tell them to stop. and I think, and where I'd go with that is, you know, we'll probably get to a point where commander's intent maybe someday could be programmed, you know, into devices that go forward. And it's not amoral, probably has to be carefully executed, but it's not one of those things where you say never, because when you get in a jam, you never say never.
That's a good point, sir. Okay, one last question I'll pitch to the whole group here so we can end it, the question period, and go into the audience questions on a positive note here. Are there any good news stories that demonstrate the ability to prototype rapidly, test, and deliver new capabilities to the fleet? And can those efforts be replicated to avoid the normal 7 to 10 year acquisition cycle? So we got about 5 minutes left before question and answer. If you want to expound on that a little bit, anyone?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of there's some great examples of where we have put capability in systems that we had never thought of, particularly over in the Ukraine. You know, and unfortunately, I can't get into the details of them, but it's really promising. It's stuff that took us years and years to do in our own armed forces, and we did it in a matter of months with cooperation of a lot of smart people from all over the United States and in Europe. So I do think there's some shining examples of it, but they're the exception. They're the rare exception. They're not the norm, and we got to make it the norm. It's got to be more of a mindset to move out more quickly. It might have been Admiral Gortney that, you know, he had a lot of funny quips through the years, but he was telling me when I was a SWO boss, he goes, Tom, there's 10,000 people that can say no, and there's only one guy that can say yes. And I think we got to get 10,000 people that can say yes and nobody that can say no. That's what we need to move to. And it's across the whole enterprise, the Congress, the executive branch, industry, American public, allies, friends, and neighbors.
Great. Anyone else care to answer?
I think there are bright spots. Over the years, we've made great progress in having combat systems that can be upgraded simply by upgrading the software. And then the next step could be you could make those improvements at even higher speed by remotely updating the software on deployed systems. And that's something we do in our private life with your phone all the time. You can do that with your ship. And that should and could be the future.
I want to add it to one question you asked earlier, and the importance of allies and our partners, and I think that's going to determine the landscape overall. But I'd say today, we're learning more from our allies and our adversaries than we are ourselves. The lessons of what we're seeing going on in Ukraine, the lessons in what we're seeing the Israelis, the lessons of what we're seeing the Iranians are shaping our thinking and capabilities as much as anything we're doing. So again, a testament to that partnership and why it's so important to leverage their lessons learned and how that prepares us for our conflicts, I think is paying dividends. A perfect example is anti-jamming. They brought down 98% of the drones in Ukraine were brought down by jamming. Another allied partner, I won't say the country, was able to bring that solution to the table, and we were able to implement it on our platforms to solve that. So again, an example of that partnership and how we all need to be tied together to drive these technologies at the rate of speed we need.
One thing I just wanted to comment on when Admiral Connor was talking about being able to update, ships like our phones. That's something that we're already there. During the Red Sea, my team called me on a Friday night and said, "Hey, sir, you got to take a look at this." I took a look at it and it looked like we had an issue with one of our baselines over in the Red Sea that was causing a tactical issue with them in the WES right then. So I picked up the phone. I called Admiral Cahill. I said, "Hey, we got an issue." He immediately picked up the phone and called Stem Miguez, the strike group commander, told him what the issue was, told him that we're working on it. Within 48 hours, we had some TTP workarounds, but with Lockheed Martin coming in that weekend, along with our folks over at NSWC and our folks over at POIWS, in 17 days, we had a software patch that we went out in Third Fleet. We had a ship underway. We put it on the Third Fleet ship. We tested it at sea, and then over the air transmitted it to a ship in the WES, brought them in, updated their software, and then brought them right back out and had fixed a problem with a baseline. That's now. We know we can do it, and that's because everybody lined up behind us and said, yes, make this happen. So we know we can do it. We just got to make that the normal.
I have to say, Admiral, from an outsider's perspective, looking in at your organization, it's eye-watering to see how quickly that your organization is moving on the data that they're getting from the Red Sea. I mean, some people aren't paying very close attention to what's going on, that this historic naval warfare going on right now out in the Red Sea, and it's really eye-watering to see how quickly your organization is able to take the data and turn it into useful training.
If I could add one more comment on allies to pick up on what Admiral Harvard was saying, is we talk a lot about ITAR, and we talk a lot about exporting our technology to other countries and the risk of doing that. Sometimes we do that with a little bit of a cultural arrogance, because sometimes the best technology is in the other country, is held by our partners, and we should be more open to taking the best from our allies, using it here, and balancing that relationship that we have with them, because that way we all go forward faster.
Sure. Okay, I know we are standing between this room and happy hour, so we're going to open it up to questions now. There's mics stationed here in the middle. If anybody has any questions for the panel, please go ahead and fire away.
Kai Alberg, U.S. Naval Institute. I'd like to ask the panel, look in your crystal balls, look 5 years ahead, and think about directed energy weapons, lasers, high-powered microwaves. What possibilities do you see as to deployable systems? What's the future of those weapon systems that are currently under development or testing?
So the question is directed energy systems.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
So there's a number of companies that are working with lasers, high-powered microwaves. There's a couple of systems fielded on Navy ships. Lockheed has one called Helios that's integrated with the Aegis Combat System. It's been installed in the ship for about 15 months. The problem is the prioritization of everything else that's going on in the world, and the maintenance and the operations and stuff has limited the amount of underway test days that we've had with the system. So we got this brand new capability, this brand new system and we're, it's just the way the world is. There's no malice on anybody's fault. We've had some trouble getting, test time. So, the SWO boss, Admiral Cahill, anybody that stands up and said, hey, we need to get directed energy weapons on the ships, and we do. And everybody's, all the big and small defense contractors, we hear them, and we're working on getting that done, because, they're not the cure-all, but they certainly can reduce the cost of engagement, and we have to give that option out to the warfighters.
I'm going to add one caveat to that. because I've shot a guy or two I didn't intend to shoot because I didn't know where that bullet was going. I still don't know if we've come to the legal, moral, and ethical use of lasers. When you shoot a laser, where's it going? What's it going to hit? Is there something beyond that? What's the power it takes to generate that? Is that a legal way to kill a guy? We've outlawed clusters bombs because it's too violent. So I still think the technology is still evolving. We've got to get ahead of the political, moral, and ethical use of lasers. Maybe for an aircraft, you ain't going to shoot it at a person, I don't believe. So there's still a lot to that realm that has not been covered. I think that we're still going to have to address as we advance the technology.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Next question over here.
Gentlemen, really good panel. My name is Skip Arney, retired Navy at AVEX Aerospace.
It's a little hard to hear because of the noise.
Okay, I'll speak up louder.
Right.
Skip Arney from AVEX Aerospace. To Vice Admiral Connor, to your last point, we've delivered over 5,000 TAC munitions to Ukraine. And part of we don't have a barrier to entry because of two things historically for our company. We work with SOCOM, and we're in a war zone. So my question for you is, it's a great point about bringing in foreign tech, and we do this all the time, but we're really encumbered by U.S. policy, particularly export policy. So I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts on how companies, or a smaller company, can tackle that problem.
We've just been through the process, extremely painful, of exporting to India. And,
God bless you.
And so I met with some folks from Australia this morning, and they said, well, yeah, but can you really get through the export process for us? And I'm like, you are going to be so much easier because of the level of trust that we have, in the Five Eyes community and so forth. So it's doable. We had to learn a lot. When the Navy said no, we had to go to OSD policy and have a high-level discussion about the fact that you can look at a country, no country is a perfect neighbor or partner, but it's nice to have partners. And so this is a case where the higher levels of government can help overcome what is a very natural institutional thing in your warfare community. I don't want anyone else in the world to be as good as us, but you do want them to be better than they are and a good partner. And there are actually levels of government where they will listen to you do that. So good luck to you.
I want to add, because I think I think our arms supply is one of our greatest political tools. And I lived this. My father was a naval officer advising the Iranian Navy for 8 years, and he retired and lived in Iran, and he represented numerous defense companies, selling them the Spruance ships, the Tomcats, all that kind of stuff. The day we left, that was useless to them. They could maintain it, but they really didn't have operational capability. So the lesson I learned, our leverage in providing arms brings countries close to us than ever before. They become interfunction with us. They depend on us, and if we leave them, it's really not utilitarian. So I think we've gone on the wrong side of the table. All the ITARs and loss of scaring what capabilities have come at a significant cost of opening opportunities for others and turning in other directions. I think we should be much more accommodating and providing, because then it ties them. They become dependent on us as opposed to not. And in the Middle East right now, everyone's turning to China, India, because they can't come to us. That's a huge failed opportunity to bring them closer to the fold. And I think now in this shift administrations, there'll be real opportunities to counter or look at these policies differently.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you very much. Next question over here.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Ken Perry, former submarine officer with Mike Connor, former neighbor of Admiral Coleman, and former plebe of Admiral Harwood. Hey, I'd like to focus.
Poor bastard. Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm not. That's why I'm here asking this
We'll
question.
talk later.
So we know how bad it is, and Tom's got the book, literally, that talks about how bad it is again. But I'd like to focus on those few nuggets, you said the bright spots, where we have achieved the speed of need here. I think primarily when the shooting started in the Red Sea, the shooting started in Ukraine. But in those cases, those few cases, the details are highly classified. But what do we know about who normally said no, said yes, and who normally provided no funds, provided money? And whatever those things are, can those things, do we know what those are? Those factors that led to closing all those switches and getting to yes. And can those things translate to the South China Sea against a much more significant threat and do it before the shooting starts? I'll start with Admiral Copeland because you have the book.
So the book gives a lot of good recommendations that have been around for a long time that nobody's taken any action on. They discuss in depth the defense industrial base. So we've talked about capability a lot today, but capacity is an issue for the defense industrial base across the board in everything we do, from munitions to airplanes to spare parts, engines, you name it. And we are designed and built to a peacetime military, which we've been operating in for the most part. There's been a few exceptions during the GWAT where we ramped up Hellfires to 14,000 a year from the usual 1,000 or so. But we've got to reform the system. We've got to take an introspective look and see, the nation, not just. I'm speaking for the nation and what they say in this book here. There's also they talk about the DIU and they talk about the RCOs, and they're great examples of where you can move fast. And other transaction authorities, you hear people saying, oh, we're going quick. Those have been around for like 25 or 30 years. Just nobody started using them until like 3 years ago or 4 years ago en masse. So there's a lot of, Mike kind of refer to that. There's a lot of stuff out there in policy that if we would take advantage of it, we could move a lot faster. But we have chosen as an ossified system, quoting this, to not do it. And so it's at our own peril. We can go fast, but the system is built to be accountable. It's not built to be fast or innovative. It's built to be accountable, the acquisition system. I know that probably bumming you out, but that's...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I probably wasn't clear. I'm just looking for, do we know why we've been successful to the extent we have with those things that have gotten to the fight quickly for Ukraine or quickly to the Red Sea for the shooters out there?
I think for us in the Red Sea is because if we didn't do something quick, U.S. sailors' lives would be put at risk.
Okay.
Simple as that. And so that broke the bureaucratic log jams and the systemic log jams that we've experienced and stuff like Admiral Marks was saying. I mean, we did changes to combat systems in a matter of days and had it on the ships that normally left to our own devices would take, I don't know, Joe DePietro would answer, but, years. The testers test the testers and, the certification and blah, blah, goes on and on and on. And it's because that's what's worked for us in the past. But and the same thing in Ukraine, it was the severity of the problem to the existence of the nation that allowed us, to spend money from places we don't normally do to assist them, and it was done by the administration.
I sincerely appreciate the response. I'm really, really concerned that to the extent that's been effective at all in the Red Sea and Ukraine, where we're not the ones directly on the front line, I don't see how that's going to be adequately effective against China unless we start doing that before the shooting starts there.
Yeah. Don't disagree.
Thank you very much for the question. So I think if we could go quickly, we can get the last two. So go for it.
Hi, Theophilus Human, Pittsburgh Coastal Energy, former submariner. I wanted to ask about critical components, critical commodities. It's great to innovate, but if we can't replenish what we're sending out to the fleets because after a conflict starts, things aren't flowing into the United States, how are we thinking about that? What risks are out there? In particular, I'll draw attention to after the war in Ukraine started, the cost of aluminum and helium went up substantially, which obviously limits the potential for innovation. Are there any thoughts about this?
It's kind of beyond my pay grade, frankly.
I think they just came out. I haven't seen it released. I've seen the drafts on strategic. It's on everyone's scope. The problem is, how bad are we off right now? I don't think anyone's able to really assess that. But I do know that's a focus of the new administration. I know people in D.C. focus it. I just don't have the fidelity of where they are on the problem or what policies they're going to change to accommodate that.
Thank you.
So great question, something we'll have to chew on. And one last question, sir.
Yes, Maurice Jose, former SWO retired reservist, and then a disruptive terrestrial celestial wireless CEO. And Bobby, because you brought it up, and it's disruptive, you said that through partnership, the jamming of drone problem is solved. Well, breaking and disruptive is now the electronic countermeasure to the ECM, which is now 40 kilometers of fiber. So 40, which can become 80 or 100 and beyond. So where are we, how are we going to engage on this next disruptive technology, which starts out land-based, but it can very easily become a seaborne issue as well?
I would just say this. Everybody's been focused on this problem in each of those domains, and I'm convinced we're ahead of of our competition in innovation and addressing this issue. That's all I could say at the moment. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know if you all want to say anything.
unless anyone has any burning comments left, I think we're out of time. Any last saved rounds? I'd like to say thank you to the panelists for contributing this insightful information, and thank you for the great questions and for the audience to sit through. Taking away here, we are moving fast. We are learning from Ukraine and from the Red Sea, and we need to continue to do that full throttle all the way. So that's kind of the big takeaway of what I'm learning here, and from the industry side and from the government side. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for your contributions today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to see you again.